Hey everyone, we are here because it's the start of the new month and we absolutely want to see the stats because there's been some real differences that we're going to tune into today. Hey everyone, Richard Payne here from Halifax Homes and Lifestyles, and we are going to give you all of the information we can to make you an informed buyer, but also an informed seller, because that's one of the key things we're going to go through as we get kind of more into the numbers and everything this time. Want to give you some information from a seller point of view, exactly how this is going to go down for you, because there's been some pretty big changes. Not only have we had the interest rates come down from the mortgage side, but we have also seen a bit of a change in the actual market to get your property sold. So let's dive right in and let's go into the first number we always do, which is what is the average sale price here in Halifax for the month of July. We hit $616,000. So I've been saying for a while now, and it's kind of been at least since the start of the year, that we've been kind of hovering around that 600 number. Well, last month that was 647. So yes, we have absolutely dropped off, by 5% from last month. And then we are actually up on last year. Last year was 606. We're at 616. So we are up 2% on last year, this month, last year. Some other big changes on that one coming up, but it definitely felt last month that we were high. Like $647,000 last month was pretty peaky. Like the worrying trend then was, are we going to get further up and actually hit like a $700,000 average price point? Because that's high. But it turns out that there was just a few kind of extraordinary blips and houses that were pretty highly priced that were actually selling last month. So we're back down to kind of it's not a normal price, because like you look at first-time home buyers and $616,000 is a pretty pricey number when you're trying to be a first-time home buyer, but at least it's back down into like a sensible number again. So when we look at that though, the other big thing we like is the days on market. Now the days on market for July hit 29. Last month that was 37, so we're down 8 days on that. And I think that's also a bit of an example as to why the average sale price was so high last month, is because that was some probably market properties that had been there quite a while and had actually gone sold. So it feels a little bit more. So we're at 29 days, which basically is a month. Last year, that was 27 days. So we're kind of in the same realm. Let's go back to the average sale price in terms of sale to list price. And we are going to go into some detail on this one. We're at 100.5%, so roughly $1,200 over asking price is where we actually ended up for the majority of, this is the average, but we'll dive into the detail on the markets later on. Now, last year, that was 101.4%, so we're definitely down a little bit, but it's kind of that feeling that we've had for quite a few months now, where the list price versus the sale price is kind of hovering at roughly the same number. So it makes things a little easier. Now we'll go into the markets as we always do a little later on. So in July, we sold 442 properties. That's down 7% from last month because June was 474. But from a July point of view, it kind of always slows down a little bit. School's finished, kids are out, parents are more interested in making sure that the kids are entertained in camps, in all sorts of programs during July than they are in necessarily trying to find a house to actually buy. So it's definitely down. But the good thing here is that number last year was 362. So we're up 22% in terms of the sales volume. Now, again, I think that could be a little bit of a factor of those mortgage rates kind of playing around, because certainly when you look at the average sale price last July of 606, 616 this month, number of sales last year, 362, but we're at 442 this year. So we've definitely increased the volume. Price didn't change that much. So really there's only one other factor in the fact that mortgage rates came down half a basis point over the last two announcements. So that's definitely spurred a few people into action on the market. Now, when we get into the number of houses active for sale, we've got 856 houses at the end of July. That was 857 last month, not really much of a change. But last year, 661. So we're up like nearly a third on the number of homes active for sale at the end of July this year versus active for sale at the end of July last year. So again, That's giving us a little bit more choice. That's giving more volume. Hence, we're up, 22% on the number of sales that we did this month this year versus this month last year. But interestingly, the inventory's not changed. We're at 1.9 months. Last month, 1.8. Last year, 1.8. So we're not increasing the number of houses that are actually going onto the market. We're still staying, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because if you look at the actual stats, the number of months of inventory, if it's less than 5, says seller's market. But when you look at the actual feeling on the ground, it doesn't feel like a seller's market, because we're like nearly 30 days, nearly 1 month to get your property sold. Last month, it was obviously higher than that as well. So it doesn't feel as though we're putting a lot of inventory on the market. And the stuff that we are putting up for sale that's actually going sold is at 29 days on market. So things are definitely taking a bit longer. So when you look at the months of inventory, when you look at the number of days on market, when you look at the average price, when you look at the number of homes active for sale, they're all like fairly steady. So even though technically we are in a seller's market, it doesn't actually feel that way. It does feel as though we're kind of a little bit more of the give and take and a little bit more of the balance. And that's certainly stacked up when you start looking at houses. We're not seeing so many houses that are all offers in by a certain day on a certain time. Yes, there's been a few of them, but we're seeing less of them. It seems to be more the norm of trying to do a 24 to 48 hours to leave all offers open for, which, depending on what the agent says, isn't necessarily the case. Like, just because they say they'd like 24 hours, you don't have to leave them open for 24 hours. You absolutely could send your offer in and say, I'll give you 6 hours. So, take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt as well when you're kind of getting into the detail on this. Now, one of the things that I always like to do as well, of course, is look at the sales to new listing ratio. And we are at 81% right now, because sold 442, but new houses that came to the market in July were 553. And it's interesting because this month, last month, this month, last year are all basically 81, 86%, 81%. So that again shows that we're not really building any inventory on the market. And to build more inventory on the market, that needs to be a much lower percentage, because obviously we need to sell more houses than we actually bring to the market, and that will get through the inventory. So it very much feels, I know we're at 1.9 months, which says it's a seller's market, but it very much feels like we're a little bit more balanced. We've got a little bit more give and take that we're actually employing. Right. Let's get into some, before we go into the actual individual markets, the top 3, and I'm going to throw a number 4 in there just because there's some interesting information in number 4 that I think is worth looking at. I do want to kind of touch on one point, because sellers, this is what's going on for you. I had a look at the 442 houses that were sold, and I said, okay, those are the ones that are actually got a conditional offer accepted on them, or they are closed sales. Because we do expect if you go conditional that you're probably going to go sold. So that's the 442. And I said, okay, let's have a look at the original list price that those properties came to the market at versus the list price that when they actually went conditional, had an offer accepted. Because, of course, one thing I'm trying to do here is to say, okay, how many houses of the 442 sold actually had to do a price reduction in their original listing price to get to a price where somebody wrote an offer? And that was a third. So 442 sales, and 135 of those houses had to drop their price by some dollar value to then be able to be attractive enough that a buyer came along and said, I'm going to write an offer. Here's the offer. It got accepted, and off they went to conditional, or even they got to the sold status, which means conditions removed. So bear that in mind. Like, that's a big thing to do, is to say that, every house that comes to the market, and this is where as well, when I look at the average sale to average list price, we're saying it's 100%, but it's not telling the real story, because it's 100% for those that sold and those that went conditional. It's not actually where those houses started. Those houses, and I looked at the average dollar price drop that those houses had to do. $40,720 was the average. And I thought, well, that's a big price drop, on a listed $615,000 house. In theory, you started at $655,000. So I did a little bit more work and said, okay, well, let's strip out all those houses that potentially have massive price drops. Typically the ones over $1 million listed. So when I stripped out all the $1 million listing houses that were actually conditionally or sold, then it dropped down to a $36,000 price drop, which is still pretty chunky. Like, that's a good number. So it's just, from a seller point of view, something you need to be conscious of. Something you absolutely need to look at is, if you're not getting offers within the first 2 weeks to potentially even 3 weeks, and you're rapidly approaching that 30 days on market and you've not had an offer, that number there, a third of all the houses that were conditional or were sold in the month of July had to do a $36,000 price drop from their original house price on average. Let's give a little bit of context here. On average, they had to do a $36,000 price drop to then become attractive enough that a buyer walked in and said, like the house, like the price, let's write an offer. And then it got accepted at roughly 100.2% sale to list price. So let's just call it sale price versus list price was the same. But in theory, they got a $36,000 price reduction already off the bat, because that's what happened. And I think that's the message, is we're going to have to be a lot more cautious about, if you don't get any activity in that first 2 weeks, potentially 3 weeks, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to react, because it feels like a balanced market. The buyers out there can see all of the data of when you bought the house. Is it conditionally different inside your house? Have you done any upgrades? And you're going to get asked those questions if you've got that price point where people are like, yeah, that's priced too high. So listen to the market, listen to the advice of your agent, listen to what's going on, and make sure that you're reacting, because you don't want to be one of the ones that's still sitting there after 30 days, 60 days, and nothing's happened. So that's the advice for the sellers for the month of July. Now, let's get into the top 3 markets. And I'll preface this because I'm going to put in a number 4 because it was kind of close as well. Right, number 1 market was East Hants, Colchester West, Elmsdale, Enfield, Lants area. They had a list price of just over $502,000. Sale price of $497,500. So that was like down 1%, roughly $5,000. 64 days on market, 43 homes were sold there. That's what makes them the top market within the 442 that we sold, because they sold more or less 10% of it. They have 88 homes active, which gives them a 2 months on the market. So that's that whole area up there. And again, a few new development houses are sold up there, but not that many. And there's not really a lot of new activity going up there right now. So stay tuned to that market. It will happen. Number 2, then, we were back into Lower Sackville, a $483,000 average list price. 502.5 sales, so up 4% and $18,000. So well done, Lower Sackville. Always been very good value, and it has been kind of like for the last 3-4 years that prices have gone up. 11 days on market, 39 sales, 16 active, therefore 0.4 months of inventory. And that's a story of Lower Sackville. It has been for a long time. Not a lot of houses for sale, so therefore when they come up, good condition, they sell pretty quickly, and they sell for a decent price, 4% higher. Now we'll go into Bedford. That was a $706,000 average list price with a $697,000 sale price, roughly $8,500, $9,000 off, which makes it 1% down. 47 days on market with 33 sales, 60 homes active, which gives them 1.8 months. There were, again, from a price reduction point of view, there was quite a lot of new construction in there that I think builders were told, stop, get these houses sold. Like, you've got too much inventory of new construction. Let's just get these houses sold. Do a $10,000 to $15,000 price drop, and let's just get them done. Because a lot of the builders that are in Bedford West right now are now going over to parts of Lake Charles in Dartmouth, and they're trying to get that subdivision working and going. So that's kind of one of the things that you got to watch out for with new construction, because yeah, it seems right now that, you know, potentially Parks of Bedford West, you might be able to go in there a little bit lower than asking price to the builder, or ask for extra things to be included, all the appliances, landscaping, stairs off the rear deck if they're not there, things like this. So do a little bit of negotiating. Now, I wanted to just give a little shout out to number 4 market, because that was Kingswood and Hammonds Plains area. They had 30 homes sold. So they were like literally just off being in 3rd place, and they haven't been there that often. Now, they had a pretty good sale price, because they were at $749,000 listed with a $742,000 average sale price, 66 days on market. So this goes back to those like older houses are actually selling. So, you can see as well, like a little bit of a price reduction, 1%, not huge, but definitely. I think there was quite a few houses in there when I was looking at that who had to do a price drop. Quite a few of those houses were in there. So they had 30 houses sold. 73 were active, which gives them 2.4 months. And then in terms of those top 3 markets, I did look at those particular houses in those markets, how many houses of those had to do a price drop. So going back to the number 1 market, East Hants, Colchester, Elmsdale, Enfield and Lance, roughly 38% of the houses had to do a price drop there, which was like, we're talking a $36,000 price drop. So 38% of the houses had to do one there. In Bedford, it was 33% of their houses. In Sackville, it was only 10% of the houses had to do a price drop. Again, shows you how strong the Sackville market is. And then in Kingswood, Hammonds Plains, it was nearly 50% of the houses there had to do a price drop. So again, just take the stats and understand exactly what they're doing. Put them into practice and make your decisions accordingly. And of course, we're always here if you want to get in touch with us, ask any questions, talk about neighborhoods, get into the specifics, and we'll give you all the information. But those were the months of July, and those were the stats.